All right, welcome everybody. Is this on? All right, welcome. We're going to get started. A creative life is a meandering one. There are peaks and valleys, highs and lows, times of great inspiration, and days when you can barely pick up a pencil. The more you figure it out, the further it seems to get away from you. This talk is a check-in with someone in the middle of your journey. It might feel like you're trudging uphill, but this talk will hopefully help you feel comfortable wherever you are. Mikey is going to touch on things like finding your voice, being patient, defining your lane, and staying in it. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome welcoming Mikey Burton.
Hi, everybody. Hi, most of you again. And I'm still here. Hello, I'm Mikey Burton. Thank you. Good night. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody who's in the workshops today. I had a lot of fun just like brainstorming with you guys and making stuff. Thank you to Joe for bringing me out here. This has been a pleasure. And thank you to the university for bringing me out too. Let's talk about some notable things I've made that you probably haven't seen. I've been a creative for a decently long time, probably about almost 20 years now. I've made a lot of work for a lot of different clients. I work for a brewery in Australia called Southeast Brewing. They have brands like Golden Axe Cider. Some people say the cider man kind of looks like me. I can't not say that's true. I think this might be one of the coolest things I've ever made is this bottle cap opener, because it seems to work pretty well. Their whole brewery is based around like Japanese super monsters. So it's all these like kaiju-esque characters. This was like a pineapple kaiju. There's all the other kind of kaijus we make for them. I'd helped them with a big branding of their brew pub last year. I think it was actually during like COVID, they kind of started to launch this, and they had like one of like the most brutal lockdowns of any country. So, I mean, it took a while to get off the ground, but I think it was really awesome and it really fit their brand well. And we kind of took some of these, the can graphics and turned them into super graphics, and I think it was really successful. And here's kind of the floor room. With I think it's a pair of brothers that own the company. I've hung out with them a couple times. I cannot drink as much beer as they can, at all. They drink me under the table every time. I've done a lot of editorial illustration for clients like the New Yorker. I've made things for Esquire. I've done a lot of work for the New York Times. These were a series of spots I made for the Atlantic about a variety of topics for like a year or two. I've made stickers for Snapchat, which was fun. This was a pack of stickers about work. This was pre-everybody working from home. Now everybody works from home. This was a pack of stickers about resolutions. I still think Godspeed New Vegan is really funny. I've made things for Casper, the mattress company, which is, it's funny, that's a cool thing. I'm originally from Canton, Ohio. The only reason you'd know Canton, Ohio, because the Pro Football Hall of Fame is there. It looks like an orange juicer. There's some meaning behind it. I don't know if like Joe Namath was conceived underneath the point, or like there's something mystical about it. Maybe there's an energy vortex. I don't know. I don't get to do a lot of work in Canton. But there's no client too small, no budget too big. So this was actually a local coffee shop like this guy I used to go to high school with. He was opening a coffee shop, and I got to do this really fun mural. And it was just like a silly thing, and I just actually hand drew it all by myself, and it meant a lot to me because it's something that actually is in my hometown, and like somebody in my hometown doing something cool makes me really happy. I like take the cant out of Canton. I think a lot of people will take a photo of that because they believe it. Take Me Home, Country Road. I really like this song. My maybe people here don't, but it means a lot to me because my dad wasn't born. He was born in Virginia, but he grew up in West Virginia, and he passed away at the beginning of 2019. And whenever I hear John Denver sing this song, I kind of get tear up. I'm not going to play it because maybe you guys do want to see me cry. I don't know. But so it makes, I feel a little bit of a connection because I love my dad and I miss him, and I owe a lot of my work ethic to him because he was a really hard worker. I always say he worked till the day he died, and then he worked till the day he died, and then he died because he loved work. He took so much joy in work. I take a lot of joy in my work, and I miss him, and I love him, and I love you, Butch. This is my family. There's Butch and Francie. My mom and dad are fourth generation jewelers. Third generation? Fourth generation. I'm not sure. Either one's impressive. It always makes me a little sad because it's not something they ever forced on me and said, hey, you should be a jeweler. They kind of wanted me to do something else. I think my dad wanted me to be a lawyer. Anyways, my mom still has a jewelry shop in Canton, Ohio. If you're ever there, it's called Burton Jewelry Repair. Stop in. She'll give you a great deal. Nowhere Now Here. That's the name of the talk. And that's how I kind of feel a lot of the time as a creative. Sometimes you'll feel like you have everything figured out, and sometimes you'll feel like you're starting over again. I think that's, the older I get, the more that rings true. And it sounds sad right now, but it's not. But let's start talking about graphic design. I went to Kent State University. A lot of people know Kent State University for probably negative reasons. But this is a rendering of the art building probably from like whatever year that was. I couldn't find an actual picture because they've since remodeled it. But it was a really awesome architectural thing that got like great light. And when I started at school, this is gonna make me seem so old and it's so confusing. When I started at school, it was like 2000, right? That is a long time ago. But there were still computers. People still made graphic design on computers. I'm not old. This is not me. People still made graphic design on computers. Like, when I went to school, there was I don't think there was the Adobe Creative Suite. There was programs like Quark and Freehand and all these things, and Photoshop. But instead of taking the money I got from my, from working in the summer and, wanting to buy a computer, I had to buy, the same amount of money invested into drafting supplies. T-squares, Rapidograph pens, Indian ink, Shadler rulers, all these old archaic tools. And I had to sit down at a drawing desk, and draw this down to a 64th of an inch. And I thought I did a pretty good job. No, you're wrong. And to me, this was like the first time I ever didn't do great at something after trying really hard at something. I think high school I did fine, but I didn't try that hard. And this, I was like, I tried so hard. How did I get a C-? It's because you did it wrong, Mike. If you really look at this stuff, it doesn't line. Those lines in the middle don't line up. So it's just this test to craft. It's kind of weeding people out of the program. But it's I lost my train of thought. It made me want to quit. I immediately wanted to quit graphic design. I was like, Dad, I'm quitting. I'm done. This is dumb. He's like, look, there's no way you're going to be drawing these donuts forever. He's like, just weather this class, and then you can make a logical decision about the next step. And I did, and I eventually enjoyed it and got through it, and it felt great. So just the first point, never quit in the middle. I think I feel like sometimes we're not as resilient as people as we used to be, and we want to give up on things for a myriad of reasons. I think things are bad and jobs sometimes should be quit, but sometimes I think there's things that we promise ourselves we're going to do, and we should see them to the end. And I'm so glad that my dad challenged me to do that then, and just don't quit in the middle. Finish that thing, then you can quit it as hard as you want to, but just finish that first step, Now I'm going to talk about some book covers. But I've been talking all day, and I'm a little parched. So I was saying I started to do better in college, and eventually I was doing so well during one of my reviews, the yearly review of the work they do of you. Like they said, hey, like you're actually pretty good at this, and that was news to me at that point in time, because before that I thought I wasn't doing a great job. They said, hey, you can actually do our combined degree where you get your bachelor's and master's all at once. I'm like, a 2-for-1, that's amazing. So this was my project I did for my final thesis project. At the time when I was doing this was like around 2007 or 8. All the books, the most exciting books were about wizards, or they're about the sexy vampire books. What are those? Twilight. There you go. And that's what everybody was talking about. And I was like, there's other books in the world, surely. So I picked a selection of books that all had kind of been banned books, questioning authority, kind of like a mixed bag of books. And I wanted to design them in a cohesive set directed towards like junior high and high school students. And at the time I was doing like a lot of gig poster work, and I kind of wanted to interject that style into it. The other selfish part of it was I really wanted, and people are going to roll their eyes because I've been talking about sketchbooks all day. I really wanted to make a sketchbook start keeping a better sketchbook. I had a friend at college, and he would always keep like really amazing sketchbooks. And I was like, I just want to be able to do that because I think it's a really valuable part of being a creative. So my whole process was just taking these, rereading these books, kind of like sketching like a bunch of ideas and kind of like just refining my process as a designer and illustrator. I'd write real weird, sad notes in here about wanting to be done with this project at 2 pages in. People probably read other weird notes in my sketchbooks today. I don't know what they said, sorry. And also try to do like different textures, like try to create like image making kind of stuff with like old, like those like blender pens and that you use to blend markers together. You can transfer like photocopies. I'll stop talking about it. And I also found like as somebody who uses a sketchbook, I always like to fill every little nook and cranny of the page. And I find like when I'm trying to push myself to that last little corner, that's when I come up with like a really, really interesting idea. So then I took all these elements I was making and scanned them in and started kind of manipulating and playing with them on the computer. Some covers were more interesting. I think that's a pretty cool cover. I don't think it ultimately fit in the final series, but just the play of like making stuff, it was kind of like taking this little notebook paper and it became the final cover where it's like this greaser skull that kind of relates to the coming of age tale of greaser youth in the 50s. But yeah, and then I just did this for every book. This is for Animal Farm. There's lots of constructivist typography and bacon. The Fahrenheit 451 is like maybe a little bit heavy on the book part of it. I think I could have explored a little bit more, Mike. You really let me down on that one. To Kill the Mockingbird, lots of more ideas. I think I think these books are kind of in order of like me making them. So this one started to feel much more illustrative than like even like the first one, where I actually was just drawing more. Lord of the Flies, some fly leg type, which is kind of fun. And then there was kind of like a simple identity, which I landed on, was like rest, relax, read. Here's the final covers. Really good craftsmanship on those covers, Mike. Way to make a fake book. And these were the final covers, and I made these a long time ago, but I still look back on them fondly because I think they came out pretty great. On the other hand, when I presented this work to the faculty, it wasn't great. I wrote a really bad paper. I did it in like 2 days. I probably didn't spell check it because spell check wasn't as good then. I'll blame it on that. No. It was a bad paper, and I was really bad at the presentation of it too. And the only thing I heard the whole time was I had this sketch of this book, chair made out of books, and they said, "Oh, that was cool. That's a really cool idea." I was like, "Okay." They're like, "Where is it?" I'm like, "What?" They're like, "That chair made out of books. Where's it at?" I don't know. I didn't. What about all this other stuff? They're like, yeah, whatever. So I got a C minus. Full circle, which is great. But I did graduate. 2 years later, I was at an advertising job in Philadelphia. The agency will rename name. I won't say the agency's name. But I came in early. I don't know what early is. It was like maybe an hour before work, and I hadn't had my coffee, and I was trying to get ahead on stuff. And I sat down on my computer, I opened my email, and I got this email from this guy, Steve. Steve's like, "Hey, man, love your thesis project. I saw it on your website. Like, it's really awesome. Like, I'd love to feature it on my blog." I was like, "Awesome, Steve. That's great." And I was like, "I got to get some coffee." Went, got a cup of coffee, came back. I was like, "Who's Steve? Like, what's going on?" Steve Heller. That sounds really familiar. Who's that? What's that name? And it was actually Stephen Heller, the famous design author that, he's the head of like the School of Visual Arts, like branding and, branding, I forget what degree it is, but like he's written like hundreds of books about graphic design. And he was emailing me, not Stephen Heller, Steve Heller's emailing me and saying like, "Hey, this is great. I want to feature it on my blog," which at the time, okay, this is also going to age me. Back in the day, there used to not be social media. There used to not be like Pinterest and TikTok and all these things. We used to have an RSS read, and you'd load your websites that you want to see, and they'd come to your desktop, and you'd read websites. And there, you could have like a design website or like a news website, and it'd come, and you'd read it on a browser window. And that was old-timey times. It was great. It doesn't sound great, does it? But it was great. But there was this print magazine was like a big magazine back then, and I think print magazine's back now. But this was a big deal. It was like how I got the most exposure as a young person, or as a younger person, like starting off in graphic design. Steve, my new buddy, was also putting together this giant anthology of famous designer sketchbooks. And he's like, "Hey, do you happen to have like a sketchbook for this project? Maybe you'd be good for this book." I was like, "Actually, I do have a good sketchbook for this book." And the sketchbook has like James Victori has a page, or like Stefan Sagmeister has a page. For some reason, I have 2 full pages of sketches in this book, which is crazy. And whoever laid out the book was kind enough to splice together the best parts of my sketchbook and put them on one page, so I look so prolific. And the other great thing that came out of this was a collaboration I did with Out of Print Books, or Out of Print Clothing, sorry. It's a really cool, it's like a one-for-one company. If you buy a t-shirt, they give a book to an underprivileged child. And then they also like sell like really beautifully printed t-shirts. And they approached me about being their first like new artist series. And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." So that's what happened. And there's this student project became a real project. And then you get to see like famous people like Chris O'Dowd or Margaret Cho or like wearing this t-shirt. And there, for some reason, like a classroom of like 8th graders that are celebrating the 50-year anniversary of To Kill a Mockingbird, and they were forced to wear this t-shirt for some reason. I don't know. Or like Kristen Bell, like wearing, the Animal Farm shirt. Like Brad Leone is standing next to my shirt that like an intern's wearing. That's cool, right? You guys know who Brad is. We all love Brad. And like this is like I'm just adjacent to the zeitgeist. I'm just like standing next to it. Like this is Jerry Seinfeld and Stephen Colbert standing next to my shirt. Why? I don't know, but it's awesome. But that's great. These shirts I made this years ago, and they live their own life and show up in pop culture. And I've made like other shirts since. Like there's like I don't like the kind of Monte Cristo that much because it's like way too long. But we made like a Raised by Libraries shirt like I think last year. And it's cool because it's a student project. Like it was something I made in school, and I collect money from it even now. Like it's a wild thing Like, I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying, like, we live in a weird world where you can make something, put it online, somebody might see it, and it might lead to a job. It seems like odd and weird, but it happens. It can happen to anybody. And it's just, that's just how it is. Creative vision realized empowerment. I feel great. And I think the more you put things into the weird ether of the internet, I think good things can and will happen from it. So basically, create your own problems and deal with them, That's what I have to say about that. The next thing, crime doesn't pay, neither do band posters, but the street cred. This is pre-making all this book cover work, but I think it kind of ties into what I'm talking about. Me and my friends used to make gig posters in our basement. This is us laughing, having fun. And this is the screen, and this is a poster. This was a poster for our friend Jake Trombetta, his band, the Trombettas. It was like, we printed like hundreds of these. He probably needed like 5. But we just loved printing. It was like one of our first introductions, just printing things. You can put different paper in, and it's great. But we just started making posters in our basement in grad school. We really enjoyed it. We didn't think much of it. There wasn't like social media to share it on. We literally, like Michael McDonald, taking it to the streets, just putting posters up around town, giving it to local venues, not asking for anything in return, just eating the cost of the production for it. We just print random things, Dada-esque things, more things in Embrace. This was for Gil Montana Party Dream, which is like a fun 80s kind of party band. This was actually a poster we did for a label. These posters seem, is it the term like thirsty or something? Is that the right term? I can't say that? I can't say that, can I? Anyways, I tried. Okay, I tried to be hip with the kids. But we kept making these posters. People would see them. There was like a website called gigposters.com where we'd share these posters. We'd get feedback on it, and people would make fun of us. And that was like the first introduction to like making posters, on making something online and sharing it online. But they eventually did get better. Like, I think this poster is really, I look back on it now, it's not exactly what I do today, but I still think it's like great. I think it's like a really like an evolution of just making like a silly poster to something more refined. This was for Joanna Newsom at the Andy Warhol Museum. And eventually like bigger bands would reach out to us like Wilco, and we get to do posters for Wilco. And it's not like, the reality is that you're not making any money off this still, but it's just cool. You know what I mean? And the hard reality was we started a company together, me and my friends. The company still exists. I left like in 2008 or 2007 maybe. The reality of it is that it takes 8 years to become a professional illustrator or creative doing the work you want to do. It might be faster now. I don't know. I think that's a quote from. All my quotes are coming up. I think they're like overheard. It's like secondhand information to me, but I always thought this was a pretty good barometer from other people I've talked to too. I think it was a quote from Chris Shaban, who's like a children's book illustrator. And I was like, when I heard that the first time, I was like, I'll cut that in half. I'll do this in like 2 or 3 years. Then I did the math. It was exactly 8 years. And from doing all the gig poster work, it kind of was a natural progression into doing a lot of editorial illustrations. So like things that I was making like this that weren't exactly like I was, when I made this in 2006, like I was still searching for my style as an illustrator. You're still like you're making things, but you're borrowing aesthetically from other things in the culture. The longer I, went on and kept making posters, like several, 3 years later, I'm making things that feel a little different, that maybe start to feel a little bit more me and have like texture and quality to them. And that feels good. And I'm kind of like establishing a lane that I work in more than just like kind of being all over the place. So this poster in particular was one of my first introductions into doing editorial illustrations for like publications and stuff. They saw, I think it was somebody at Wired saw this poster and they're like, hey, that's a really awesome poster. do you do editorial illustration? And I was like, of course I do. Why wouldn't I? I never had, and I was just going to stumble through this because that's how you get anything done. So it was funny because the first article was about design thinking to change the world, which is kind of a meta first article to do something about. And I didn't, like, as much as I'm an advocate for sketchbooks and stuff, I thought they just wanted to see, like, final art. So I just went through this, like, thing of making, is that okay? I touched that, okay. I just went through this thing of making, like, a bunch of, like, things that felt final that maybe weren't right for the topic. Like, this doesn't have anything to do with design thinking. And then I did that thing where, like, and I know you guys do this when you version out your teacher, where you're like, you start throwing versions at them, boom, 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 and see what sticks. Is this it? Is this it? Is it? Is this it? Is this one? This one? I did that because I was spiraling, and they were gonna say, they're like, at one point they're like, we might have to find somebody else to do this. I was like, oh, okay, here's more versions. Ultimately, they're like, this is good. This is actually good. We like this. I think the final article got like killed. Like, I think they just got cut from the magazine, anyways. But I love the pace. I was like, this is it. I love like working this quickly, getting this, like trying to think on your feet like this. And I did a lot of editorial illustration for a long time. This was an article, or these were like icons for the New Yorker, and they were about how we interact with pets. So these are all like fun doodles about like how we interact with pets. Like there's a bone buried in the yard, and there's also iPhone, smiley face ladybug. You have Captain Ahab and the whale at the bottom there. And ultimately, they just really like this sweet, cat. And I didn't have a cat when I drew this, but like, if your cat did this to you, your cat loves you. My cat's never put his paw in my hand. The cat loves you. This was a series of illustrations I did about for Real Simple magazine. They were about the psychology of spending, the psychology of debt. And of course we spend to, feel happy, we spend for self-worth. Those things make us feel better. I always thought this was like a nice combination of like my design-y brain and my illustration brain kind of coming together in the best way. One of my favorite things to do as like an illustration challenge was to do stuff for the New York Times. Because it's this bonkers, like this bonkers deadline. Like they will email at you at like 11 a.m. They want the sketches by 2 and the final by 5 p.m. And that is just, you are just like thinking on your feet, eating at your desk, just getting it as done as quick as you can. And this was an article about rural America needing cities and the symbiotic relationship between rural America and cities. And, there's different ideas with, weather vane and a skyline there. You have like a skyline hidden in a cow, which is kind of a fun idea. Number 6, I like that. I did not want to draw that because it seems hard, of like a corn made, and the husk is like this skyscrapers falling around it, which seems like it could be interpreted weirdly now that I'm saying it out loud. But ultimately, I really like this tractor with the skyscrapers and the smokestacks of it. And a lot of this, like, this is how I usually work. This is the secret sauce, people. This is how I make things. Don't take any pictures, okay? Seriously. It's just a lot of shape making. It's not like I can't use a pen tool. It's hard as hell. Who can use that thing? Bezier curves or whatever. Get out of here. You just put some shapes together, and you can build stuff out of them. It's great. And then I do all this work and make it nice and clean, and then I'll just print it out and just muck it up, just slop it up, just get the marker on there and just make it look terrible. Scan it back in, and then it's in the pages of the New York Times. And like, I think the art director for this was Jim Datz. He's always a great guy to work with. They always make it look so nice in the page and like kind of wrap stuff around the type and around the illustration. And this was the web version. More sketchbook talk. As much as I have worked for a lot of great publications and a lot of different awesome brands and different things, the thing that I really like about, some things you look back, you're like, oh, that job went this way or that way. I just love having a sketchbook and like working in my sketchbook. I'm never like afraid of my sketchbook. It's like a safe place for me to like draw. There's no judgment. It's just like I've established this way of working in it that I just really enjoy. And it's something I always kind of share because I feel like it's such a great tool as a creative, as any creative, as a writer, anybody can use a sketchbook and like kind of get a lot out of it. And I don't know why I'm advocating for sketchbooks so much today. I think it's just part of me. But I have I have like 13 or 14 of these just chock full of the same amount of work now. And it's fun to go back and see, looks like it's from 2016. It's fun to go back and see, how far I've come, how, different things are. And yeah, ultimately, if you do anything for too long, you're going to get stuck. As much, I don't do as much editorial illustration now, but there was a grind for a while I was doing a lot of it. But once you start doing it for a while, things like kind of repeat. Like this is the first one was an article for Real Simple. This is an article for like Mental Floss magazine. This is an article for Esquire. Common things start to repeat, just the nature of things. We communicate in certain ways visually, and people have understanding of things, and it makes it easier. This was probably for the Atlantic, it was about polling, election polling. This was about bringing textile jobs back to America. One of these was about the Ebola virus coming to America. One of these was about immigration in America. This one is about adding, what if Puerto Rico joins America? Where are we going to put the star? This one is about, what's it look like if we extend the term limits for presidents? This is probably about broadband internet or something. I don't know. It's hard to do anything for a while and stay really engaged in it. No matter how much you can think you're engaged in it and you're doing your best work, but ultimately something has to change. I don't know how real this is, guys. So don't come at me. Being a professional illustrator the last 7 years, this is something that I heard at the unnamed ad agency I worked at in Philadelphia. This is what one of my creative directors said when I left, was like, oh, he can do that thing for like 7 years. He was right. He's right. Like after 7 years, it started to change. Like I didn't get as much work. But I also wasn't engaged in it. And maybe I was not like pushing myself to make the most different thing ever than I was before. It comes down to perfect eyesight and no vision, and that's not necessarily bad. Like some things happen. I met my wife, who I love. I am such a work-driven person. Here's a doodle of this, and I had more clean-cut hair. She makes me such a more balanced person in life. I don't care about graphic design as much anymore. It's like I'd rather just hang out with her and not worry about everything, because she makes every day awesome. And what else is there to life? Here's a picture of us on our first date that somebody snapped behind us. It was like the best. But yeah, life, not everything's about design. And I feel like it took me a long time to learn that, because I was just so focused on making art and design, and it's not all about that. But when you have to change and you have to do something different, sometimes you can find an interesting thing that you can do, and it might fit into what you do in an interesting way. I found a very cryptic job post about a late night TV show I don't even know if I'm supposed to talk about this. Honestly, this might get me in trouble, because they're pretty closed-mouthed about a lot of this stuff. But I'm going to do it anyways, because whatever. I saw a job post for working for a late-night TV show, and I thought, that sounds really fun. I wonder what late-night TV show is. I reached out, and it's this guy. And this is what I do 2 days a week, and I've done it this was my 7th season. So 2 days a week, I'm just cranking through, I don't make the jokey ones, people. I don't make the ones that are really hilarious. There's really funny ones where he's paying off jokes. I don't make those. I make the very serious ones that are just the topic openers or topic header, or they're called the over-the-shoulder graphics. This was probably the first year, because it's a lot of Trump stuff. Anyways, But here's a little bit of insight onto how that works. Like it's kind of like I enjoy it because it also is a grind, like doing editorial illustration. It's like you just work really hard and get it done, and you try your best to make the best work. But at the end of the day, the show must go on. So this was for an Italian election. An Italian election. Is that offensive? Sorry, sorry. I can't not do an Italian accent. Okay, so these were just, it's a lot of this is just you're working so fast. It's like you basically have full reign on assets on like Getty and like Shutterstock. You take all these elements and you try to make something new and interesting. Whether it's like, the boot shape with the little voting card coming out of it. I always try to do jokey stuff, but they never like it. Another joke, but ultimately it's interesting because ultimately everything I make for the show has to go through research. I probably shouldn't talk about it. Okay, it's crazy, like the amount of research they do just for segments and things, and how much goes into it, and how much approval happens. And sometimes things just need to be, like images need to be so neutral, like just such like not tipping the story, not doing anything like that. It's just like a really simple in between. This was one about public shaming, which was interesting. It's kind of an aggressive one, Mike. Web browsers. Scarlet Letter, which is cool. The egg's too much. Get that out of there. Okay, that feels better. I like making stuff like this, but I know they won't pick it. I think I've slowly stopped doing like really crazy stuff because they're like, it's too bright. It's too bright next to John. You can't do that. Okay, sorry. Public shaming. I think this is ultimately what we went to, and then we probably go through like, I'll do like 20 iterations of this. It's exactly right. It's a lot of versioning. But it's, I think I've probably made, it's like 2 days a week, I probably make 4 images a week. I think I figured out it's probably made like 700 images for the show. It's a lot. But there's my name. There in the bottom. I'm not even a senior graphic artist. I'm just a graphic artist. It's fine. I work from home. I don't have to go anywhere. I went to the job interview and I'm like, this is awesome. I get to go to the office. Maybe I'll see John around the water cooler. Go, hey, buddy. Nope. They're like, you are good. Go home. What? Yeah, just you work from home. You don't work here. We don't want you around the talent. Just go home. Okay, that's fine. And it was great. It's really fun. Here's me at the Emmys. Pretty dapper, Mike. I should have wore a tux tonight. Look like Clooney. No. Actually stuck. I'm going to talk about actually stuck because these are all fake stucks in my head that I'm just making up myself. The pandemic. Oh, that's a heavy card, Mike. Pandemic wasn't great for anybody. It was really hard. There wasn't time to be creative. We lost people. I know a lot of people lost people. It was really hard. This is a hard turn. I'm sorry. But it's just, I was married. We were having a good time. Nothing happened to my wife. Oh my God, this is going on. No, I was married. I stopped being creative. I stopped actively worrying about making the most cool things ever. I think during the pandemic, I think I deal with stress and discomfort and all that stuff by just making things. I don't think that it was necessarily the best thing to do during the pandemic or do that. I don't think you had to. I think people needed to deal with it the way they need to deal with it. But I think I was faced with hey, Mike, you need to progress your career forward. You need to do something even though you don't want to do anything. So I started kind of taking the skill I learned from my sketchbook that I'd always given to other people for work and kind of applied it to myself and started making just personal ideas. I'd make this is for a book cover project or this is for a band. I never just like tried to like put something out there that is me. So I started trying to do that just to kind of process everything that was going on in the world, because there was a lot going on in the world. Are we still in the pandemic? I don't know. It's a lot of questions. But it was a lot, we were still all like kind of sussing it out in our head. So I think that was my way of like kind of getting through all that. It was just making dumb doodles that maybe would, be positive in a very dark time, or just be dark in a very dark time. It doesn't really matter. Some of them were political. Some of them I feel like a lot of them are just trying to be hopeful every day and just try to get through the day. I just forced myself to get through this little sketchbook and do all these fun doodles and, work like, oh, sorry. Oh, God. That was a weighted yawn. Wow. I feel you, bud. This was like a horse. This is what happened in my head every day. Every day I'd wake up, a Trojan horse would roll into my head and would dump all this in my lap. That's how I felt every day. And I'd say, remember to keep going, Mike. Here's a plant that says sage wisdom on it. It's telling you what to do. Here's a flag I made for my hometown of a man smoking in his car with the windows up. This is the closest thing I've ever made to making a Gary Larson cartoon. Summer was rough too. Here's a pot that's boiling over inside, but it's actually me. More doodles. That totally, yes. I'd start to make stuff like this, and I would be like, yes, like I wouldn't think I'd draw this, but like just going through this process of making things, that's how I think that's really me in a way. When I'm like making things, I feel like I'm finding like some kind of like voice for like the work I make. I think we went camping. I never went camping as a kid. It's a challenge to start a fire. It really is. Especially if it's wet out. It was just a way to deal with a lot of stuff in an uncomfortable time, and I feel like I really liked just forcing myself to make these silly things during the pandemic. There's no greater humility than cleaning out your cat's litter box. That sweet Egyptian prince, I love him so much. Find inner peace, get it. More optimism stuff. Choose optimism. It's really trying to force my way through this time. Common decent will prevail. Will it? Maybe. Still out for debate. This seems I nailed it there. I feel like I also started sending a lot of like mail the past couple of years, just like sending people postcards. I don't have it on my website right now, but you could just sign up and I'd send you a postcard. I think I stopped because I was trying to like write something thoughtful every time I'd send a postcard, and it really started stressing me out. Stock beanies of head pants. Don't lose your joy. One ring at a time, bad luck. This was very pandemic-y, Monday coffee. The old brain scratcher. These are almost done. I just can't. Never said I could draw, still don't. I found that I really, just doing this process for myself, I found out like I really love just wordplay. I never thought of myself as somebody who likes to write or anything, but just like forcing yourself to be in a sketchbook and kind of, you get kind of lazy at some point and you're like, I don't really want to draw everything, but I'll write some stuff. And this is it. And that was the pandemic sketchbook. And what, I don't even know where I was going with this. I just kind of lost track. It's not like this was anything that made me a celebrity online. It was just something I was posting online. And it made me, for lack of a better word, just be content with my content. I don't think, I think there's so much weight to put things on the internet and for it to perform in some way and people to like it or something. But I think the aspect of just making all this stuff was just like interacting with people and people were like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me on that day, whatever it was. And I don't necessarily think it like has to influence, it just made me more comfortable making things for me and expressing things that I want to express versus it being for somebody else. And I think that's a hard thing to do. It's hard to put things out there and share things and make things for yourself. But I challenge people to do it because you just never know what will come of it. I think it's like, you know, this change in like making work, you know, out of like taking the aesthetic I'd make for illustration and just really embracing like my sketchbook. You know, I think it started to kind of bleed into my client work where I'm doing things for like, you know, local coffee shop. This was like for like a local college where it's like a little bit more me. It's a little bit more actually me, where I'm actually like making things that look like my handwriting. I'm not like faking something. And eventually it does bleed into commercial work. This is something I made for Apple, doing a similar style like a year later. So just, you know, I think being okay with, you know, everything's not going to hit at once. You're not going to get exactly where you're going to get at right when you want to. It takes time to be a creative. It takes time, it takes patience. But I think if you try to find a way to be true to your voice and stay in your lane and kind of make the work you want to make, I think we're in a very unique time where there is this broad internet you can reach very simply, and there you can find an audience for your specific brand of like weirdness or whatever it is. This is now. This brings me up pretty much now. 2022 was my slowest year as a freelancer. That's just honesty. I mean, it was a really slow year. I don't know. It wasn't great. It made me question a lot of things. But it also made me keep making personal work. But the thing is, like, I don't know if it's good. This is one of my favorite quotes from my teacher, one of my college professors. I was like, probably like fourth week into a project, like about to turn it in. This is what he said to me when I brought in my work. I just was like, I always think about it because I think it's like the funniest thing you could say to somebody. It's hard to know it's good anymore. Okay. But I appreciate that, and I cherish him saying that because I always think about it. And it's my professor, David Middleton. He actually, me and my friends were having a bad day for some reason, and he brought us in, this is when we used to burn CDs, you know, there'd be a compact disc you burn music to. He brought us a stack of the band XTC, which is a really awesome band, and it was like the whole catalog. He's like, here guys, I know you guys are having a bad day, and we just listened to it, and it's awesome music. Anyways, I started doing more personal work this past year because it was a bit slower, and I've started to do a lot more letterpress work, and I don't know if it's good. It's just really simple words on paper. There's not as much personality to it. It's a little bit more straightforward. The personality really relies on all the letters doing their job, but I like it. I mean, I think this is really fun. It's fun to kind of run, post-it notes through a letterpress, see what happens. Somebody got really mad at me online about this. They're like, the micro impressions are ruining your letters. And I was like, oh, gosh, I did not know that. These are printer noises. That's what noises you make when you're a printer. My sketchbook looks a little different. There's a lot more words in it, lots more like trying to like come up with ideas really simply for printing. This was definitely during a pandemic poster, which I think is really fun. I mean, not the pandemic, just this poster. Sorry. Low on ideas, high on ideals. I like that one. I like this poster because there's a misspelling in it. It's missing an R and embarrassed, yeah. which is great. It really pays off the poster. That was not intentional. And then I go back to making this stuff the same way I make my other work, and it all informs itself, and it all comes back around. At the end, this is how I feel every day. But my last note is, I'm not going to do a big list of things, is to everybody, old and young, anybody who's a creative here, just be patient. I feel like we are so impatient as people. We have these computers in our pockets. We want everything immediately. If we send an email and if somebody doesn't respond like 5 minutes later, we get upset. If you don't respond to a Slack, people think, whatever, you're slacking off. I don't know. It's a very demanding world. And to be a creative in this world, it takes time. It takes time to develop your skills. It takes time for people to notice you. It takes time to get your first job. It takes time to get a new job. It takes time for an illustration man to change his direction in what he's doing. But I encourage you to be patient, because I love being a designer. I love my career. And I think if you put in the time and you're patient, I think it can pay off for people, and I think it will. And I'll Ted Lasso at the end and just say believe. Thanks again. Do you have questions?
In your design work, it seems like you are referencing analog printmaking a lot,
Mm-hmm.
like the texture and stuff.
Yeah.
Could you talk about what does that give your work, or why do you think you're drawn to that texture so much throughout all of the work that you've shown?
The question was, he asked why does all of my work look like it's been printed, or why am I so obsessed with letterpress? Mike, why it's a digital world. Why are you still loving the printed things in it? I don't know. I've just always. It's really simple. I went to school. They had a printing press at Kent. They had like a type lab, an unorganized type lab. Nothing was together. None of the wood type was together. It was all in galleys. Everything was destroyed. They would go to this printing shop, this bulk paper store. They just take paper, throw it in these bins. They just let the kids have at it. It was wild. I couldn't looking back at it now. We just treated those machines not great, but I loved it. It was so transformative as a young person. I was like, this is awesome. I love the way this looks. I love the quality to it. I think it was just thinking about everything being so slick and clean and not having personality. I think I was always trying to interject that into my work. So when I would do my thesis project or something, I wanted it to have that modeled letterpress texture, even if I wasn't printing it. And now the older I get, the more I just didn't embrace it as my thing. I guess it's I want everything to feel printed. I want it to even if it's living in a digital space, I want it to have that analog texture. I printed all the slides. I didn't have to. Nobody even knows. But I was I'll print these. I'll set up the type for each one and print them, just because I think it's fun. But no other reason than that. Yes.
So when you're working in an industry where you're constantly working for clients and trying to fulfill a product or product-based stuff, how do you balance that with developing your own style as an artist?
How do I develop my own skill as an artist while working as a professional and balancing professional work and personal work, right?
Yeah, because you talked about learning how to develop your own style of design or
Yeah.
making work that's unique to you, developing
Yeah.
your own style.
It's challenging. I think it took me a long time to come to the style I'm doing now. It's not it probably doesn't, it all probably seems like the same lump of stuff to everybody here. But I think I know the difference because I know how I'm making it. Or there were, I think from when the editorial work started to decline a little bit to when I started doing the show, I think there was a gap in there where I wasn't really making much of anything. I was just living, having fun, not just kind of doing the same thing over and over again. And that's when things get that's when it's like I got to the point where I was like, I can't, as a freelance person, I have to do something different. And it's not like by choice of like, oh, I'm gonna do this thing because I want to. It's like, oh, I need to. I think during the pandemic, I kind of was like face to face with that in a way. Among everything else, it was this other thing. It's like, you also don't know what you're doing with your career, Mike. And I was like, come on, pandemic, leave me alone. You're the worst at everything. So I think that just made me like, okay, I have to do something. But yeah, I think it's just necessity. If I want to keep doing a freelance work and not do like a other like full-time job where I'm not, I like working from home. I like being around my wife. I don't know if she feels the same way, but I'm sure now she'd probably be mute. So why did you say that? Yeah, that's why. You? Or are you waving at me? You saying hi? Oh. Okay. Yeah.
What did you do for work when you got out of college? Or did you do any freelance before you got into a corporation, or did you have one lined up?
He asked what work did I do before college?
Or right as you got out of college?
Right as I got out of college. Well, I was very foolish, because I wasn't foolish, but me and my friends started, when we were us in the basement, we started a little company called Little Jacket. We started doing gig posters in college, and then that was like our first job, but we didn't make any money. Like we all had like, I think I worked at like, our own friend worked at like some other like digital company in town. I was probably doing it more full time, but like I think my mom was like floating me like lunch money some days because it was really bad. And it was also it was like right like around right before the recession too, so it was like not great. And I also had that I wanted to work for myself, but I didn't know how to. So like going to like an agency, I feel like I got like a big education about like how to make work, but like, yeah, I was just struggling. I think I worked at Outback Steakhouse for a bit, which I did before in college. But yeah, it was just like I'd be making like that like gig poster for Wilco, and I'd be like then washing dishes. So it was great. Yeah.
So like doing stuff more like the John Oliver work and the editorial stuff, and then doing the personal work, do you think it gets easier to sort of let go of an idea when it doesn't seem like the clients want it, if you're still doing stuff that's more personal, or do you still kind of have that give and take with someone when you really want it but they don't really see what you see in it?
You're saying like just, is it easy to let go of ideas when I'm working for like commercial work versus making personal work? Is that what it was essentially? Yeah. I think the longer I think that's the whole thing. The longer I go on, the more I can separate the two. Where it's like like John Oliver is a very specific thing, has a very specific time or frame. I kind of know what's going on there. It lives its own life. I don't try to get as much creative fulfillment from it. I enjoy it. It's fun. It pays money. It's like all that. But like the things I make for myself, I used to get like so much gratification out of working for like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Economist or all these things. Now I don't care as much. I just want to make things that feel like me. And I'm okay if those things, nobody likes those things. It's okay if like one person likes that thing versus like, it's just compartmentalizing that. It's like, sometimes it's like almost like a dangerous drug to say like, work at the job that fulfills all your creativity, right? Because that's like, that's a lot of weight for a job. Like you want money and you want to be happy and you want all these things from a job? What? It's like a lot to ask for a job. So I think sometimes if people can find the thing they do that they love and they have to work, I don't know if people have hobbies anymore. Like that's like, or maybe people have a lot of hobbies, have a lot of bread making hobbies now and pottery and different things. But like, I think it's a little different. But yeah, I think it's also like I've made so much stuff I don't, it's like, I don't, you don't want that, it's fine. Yeah.
So the Times and the Oliver's television and the Wall Street Journal, is that all freelance?
It's all just like, it's all just freelance jobs. It's just like, you know, it's like, it's a really tough, oh gosh, there's so much, oh gosh, I can't have this up here. Sorry. It's a tough industry, just like writing for those publications is tough, because it's like the rates for illustration have not changed in like 20 years or 10 years. Like they're still the same. And like you have to just grind. You just are always making stuff.
So did you live in a city when you were?
I lived in Philadelphia. I never lived. I lived in New York like years later, but I never lived in the city. But nobody knows where I live anyway, so it doesn't matter.
My daughter freelanced and lived in Brooklyn, and her story was that now she's gone, that you have to live in the city to get the good freelance jobs. Do you today?
I think she's lying to you. She just didn't want to come home for Thanksgiving that one time. You gotta get her on her about this stuff. No, I think it depends on it. Like the longer, I feel like everybody knows work from home now. Like just from COVID, everybody gets it. Like like when the pandemic happened, I was like, yeah, this is what I've been doing for like 10 years. But everybody's catching on now. Like nobody knows where you live. Nobody knows any of your stuff. Like you can work. I've lived in. I lived in Philly for a while. I lived in New York. I lived in Chicago. I've lived in LA. Like nobody knows where you're at, and it doesn't matter. It's like the work is what matters. But I mean, and now I think that's everybody knows that because we were forced to deal with it.
And then once you get into one big
Yeah.
market, then you don't have to be in the city.
Yeah, I think once you have like art directors you work with, you know, they pass your name on to people. That gets pretty small, but I think it's also like at some point all the art directors I work with all got out of the industry. Like they've all moved on, and then it's just like younger people in the industry, and then they want to hire the friends they work with. So it's like a constantly shuffling thing. Yeah, it does. I mean, for all of you, it's a young person's game. It's your time. That's great. I'm getting older. I'm over 40 now. I'm fossil now, so you can't, you know, you can't do it all forever. I'm okay with that. I think it's like choosing what you do now. That's great. I like the things I make now. I'm happy about the things I made before, and I'll keep making stuff because I really enjoy it. So, yeah.
Do you think working from home in this industry is like so common now that you go ahead and plan on that and start like gearing mentally for that to be like, or do you think it's still kind of like there's a lot of in-person stuff too, and I should be focusing on different locations?
I don't know. That's a good question. If everybody's going to go to work from home, or if people will go back to working in offices, I think some people will, because I think there's something lost in working around people. I think it's nice to work around people and like bounce ideas and not just them slacking you all the time and being at people's beck and call like 24/7. That can be really not fun. Like it's nice to have that detachment, but I mean, my wife works for a company, like a startup in San Francisco, and it's a grind. It's like, I feel like it's like almost harder because like you're always like kind of on, you know. And then she's like working from Ohio, and then she's working in like LA time frame. So like it's supposed to not be like that, but like she's on West Coast time a lot of the times. But I think there's a lot of opportunities for both. I bet. Where there are people who do have more remote jobs. I mean, I've seen some jobs come up that say they're remote, they're partial remote. I think that might be a big thing too, is where like maybe corporations or companies don't want to pay for office space, but they still want you close, so you can come in like once or twice a week. And I know a lot of people who do that too. So.
Read an article in the Times, and it was about
Yeah.
but you're actually working out of the office, they have less spaces. Those offices
Yep.
are impersonal. It's not your office, it's an office.
It's like a showroom. It's like it's like the face of a company versus it being like
Sign up
facilitating.
for an office on
Yeah.
this day, somebody else is in that office tomorrow, but
Mhm.
you're supposed to be in there. Or the county is in there.
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah.
So you've got some pretty cool jobs from exposure, and I was just curious, like, where do you see like people reaching out to you the most right now? Or like you have changed, and then also two-parter. What would you recommend for exposure? Because like especially right now, like I know you have an Instagram page, checked you out, follow you, but like I just feel like there's so many platforms, there's
Yeah.
so many different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Like, where have you found the most success with that? Like, right now, like, when you get your freelance work, where do you see people reaching out to you?
She asked where to post your work as a young person looking to put their work in the world, correct? Kind of.
And then, like, where do you see people, like, reaching out to you?
Where do I see people reaching out to me the most? It's so weird. It's like Instagram was like a place that felt like a good place to share stuff, and now it doesn't. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't seem like it helps artists as much. You know, I feel like there was a while where I would just not like there was like a couple. It wasn't like a long time, but there was a couple years where that was. Oh, I saw your work here. But now I don't. I think for a younger person starting out, I think it's like finding one or two that you don't feel too cringy about to use as your creative platform. And that's. I don't think you have to do them all. I don't think you should do them all. I don't think that's mentally healthy. But I think if you want to get your work out there, it does need to be on a website. It needs to be somewhere. I don't understand TikTok. I'm an old person who looks at TikTok videos on Instagram 2 weeks later. So that's me, sorry. But yeah, I mean, it seems like, you know, like trying those things out and see if they work for you without trying to like, like sell your soul doing it. You know what I mean? Some people, you watch them, hey guys, like you're just like, what? Like this is you? You sound like every other person who has a channel or something. I think it's just like, if there's some way to interject yourself into that realm in one of these channels without it being like some weird thing. I don't think it's something you can ignore, which is like kind of a bummer. But like it's like pick a couple and see how they work. I think that's the best advice I can give. And like I think people just, I mean, some people probably reach out to me through Instagram or I was like kind of using Twitter again, which is, oh gosh, now it's even wilder. And I just logged out of it and have logged back in months. So social media is so weird, I don't know. Any tips for me? No? Oh, I mean, hey,
That's like how I'm banking on getting my first job.
mail's back, baby. Send some mail. People send mail. Send a letter. Send postcards. That's because people are like, I got a letter? Am I in trouble? Somebody coming to get me? Oh, no. They just have my address? What? Somebody wrote this with a pen? That's fun. I don't know. But we got to close it up? Okay. Thank you, everybody, so much for having me.
Well, thank you all for coming. Have a good evening.